My name is Grace Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. What I'm about to share with you might sound like something out of a legal thriller, but every word is true. And it happened just last year when my adoptive mother tried to steal my $2.5 million inheritance using 3 lawyers and a room full of family members who thought I didn't deserve a penny. You see, when someone spends 24 years reminding you that you're lucky to have a roof over your head, they never expect you to inherit more money than they'll see in a lifetime. They especially don't expect the grandmother they ignored to have planned the perfect legal counterstrike from beyond the grave. Before I tell you exactly how I walked into that ambush and turned the tables completely, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if stories about standing up to family bullies truly resonate with you. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment. Now let me take you back to that Tuesday morning when my phone rang and my adoptive mother's fake sweet voice said the words that changed everything. The law offices of Johnson and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of a gleaming downtown high-rise. As I stepped out of the elevator that morning, my heels clicking against marble floors, I already knew something was very wrong. Patricia had insisted on this specific location, this specific time, and when Patricia Mitchell got specific, it meant she'd been planning. The receptionist barely looked up. Conference room C, they're waiting. They. Plural. My stomach tightened. I pushed open the heavy oak door to find a scene straight out of my nightmares. Patricia sat at the head of the polished conference table, her brother Robert to her right, both wearing their court-best suits. My adoptive siblings, James and Linda, flanked them like guards, but it was the 3 men in identical gray suits on the opposite side that made my blood run cold. Lawyers. 3 of them. Grace, finally! Patricia's voice dripped honey over poison. Sit down. We have documents to discuss. The papers were already spread across the table, official-looking, intimidating, with little yellow tabs marking signature lines. I recognized the letterhead immediately. Transfer of inheritance rights. You brought lawyers? I kept my voice steady, though my hands trembled slightly as I pulled out a chair. Robert leaned forward, his retired lawyer smirk in full display. We're simply ensuring everything is handled properly. After all, we're talking about a substantial sum that rightfully belongs to the family. The family. As if I'd ever truly been part of it. But I wasn't the naive little girl they remembered. While they'd been arranging their lawyers and their ambush, I'd been making arrangements of my own. My phone buzzed once in my purse, a simple message that made me breathe easier. I was not alone. Looking at their expectant faces, I couldn't help but remember the 8-year-old girl who'd arrived at their doorstep with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes and a teddy bear. My parents had died in a car accident, and Patricia, my mother's distant cousin, had graciously taken me in. Every family dinner for the next 20 years ended with the same reminder. Grace, you should be grateful. Not everyone would take in someone else's child. Someone else's child. Never their daughter. Never just Grace. The distinction became clearer as we grew older. James got a BMW for his 16th birthday. I got a lecture about not expecting handouts. Linda's college tuition was paid in full. I worked 3 jobs to afford community college before nursing school. Family vacations to Hawaii? Sorry, Grace, only 4 tickets this year. Christmas cards with the Mitchell family never included my face. But there was one person who saw through it all. Grandma Eleanor. Patricia's mother-in-law had moved in with us when I was 15, and from day one, she treated me like I'd always belonged. While Patricia counted every dollar spent on my food and clothes, Grandma Eleanor taught me chess in her study. While Robert called me the stray at family gatherings, she introduced me as her granddaughter to everyone at her country club. You're more my granddaughter than blood could ever make you, she told me once, her weathered hands holding mine. Blood doesn't make family, Grace. Love does. And you, my dear, have more love in your pinky finger than some people have in their entire bodies. I'd laughed it off then, thinking it was just Grandma being sweet. I didn't know she was already planning. I didn't know she'd been watching Patricia's treatment of me for years, documenting things, making notes. I didn't know that when she updated her will 2 years before her death, she did it with 3 independent witnesses and a video camera rolling. Most importantly, Patricia didn't know either. Grace? Patricia's sharp voice snapped me back to the present. We don't have all day. These lawyers charge by the hour, and frankly, this is costing the family money. Money that should be going to James and Linda's futures. The family. There was that word again, wielded like a weapon I wasn't allowed to touch. Let me be clear, Patricia continued, shuffling the papers with practiced efficiency. Mother Mitchell left you that money due to confusion in her final months. We all know how she was at the end. Not quite herself. I bit my tongue. Grandma Eleanor had been sharp as a tack until her last breath, and everyone in this room knew it. James cleared his throat, his expression mimicking our mother's disapproval. Look, Grace, we're not saying you don't deserve something, but 2.5 million? While I'm struggling to keep my position at Mom's company? While Linda can't even find work? Linda nodded eagerly, her designer handbag, a $3,000 Christmas gift from Patricia, sitting prominently on the table. It's not fair. We're her real grandchildren. Real. There it was. Uncle Robert pulled out a folder, his voice taking on his courtroom tone. I've taken the liberty of researching similar cases. Courts often overturn wills when there's evidence of undue influence. A non-blood relative who suddenly inherits everything while biological family gets nothing? Red flags everywhere. I was her caregiver for the last 2 years, I said quietly. I took unpaid leave from the hospital. I slept in a chair beside her bed for her final 3 months. Exactly! Patricia's eyes lit up triumphantly. You isolated her from her real family. Classic manipulation tactics. The accusation hung in the air like a slap. I wanted to scream that they'd visited Grandma exactly 3 times in her final year, and only when they needed money. I wanted to remind them how Patricia had complained about the burden of having her mother-in-law in the house, how she'd tried to put Grandma in the cheapest nursing home she could find. But I stayed silent, because Grandma Eleanor had taught me something else during those long chess games. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. The first lawyer, a thin man with cold eyes, slid a document across the table. Miss Mitchell, this is a voluntary transfer of inheritance. Sign here, and this unpleasant situation goes away. Refuse, and the family will be forced to pursue legal action for undue influence, elder abuse, and fraud. Elder abuse. They were accusing me of elder abuse. My phone buzzed again, a simple message. Imposition. I looked up at their expectant faces and smiled. Before I sign anything, I need to make a phone call. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, you'll understand what comes next. Before we continue, if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button. It really helps others find these stories. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to family members who thought they could walk all over you? Your stories give me strength. Now let me tell you what Patricia didn't know about Grandma's final months. No phone calls, Patricia said sharply. You decide now, or we file the paperwork this afternoon. The second lawyer, a younger man with an eager expression, opened his laptop. We've already drafted the complaint. Elder financial abuse, isolation of a vulnerable adult, forgery concerns regarding the will's witnesses. Forgery? I couldn't help but laugh. You're seriously suggesting $2.5 million, Grace? Robert interrupted, his voice hard. That's not just money. That's security for this entire family. That's James's children's college funds. That's Linda's chance to start over. That's Patricia's retirement. Patricia's retirement. From the company she'd inherited from her late husband. The company worth $8 million. And if I refuse, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Patricia's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Then we destroy you. Every hospital in this state will know you're under investigation for elder abuse. Your nursing license? Gone. Your reputation? Destroyed. And after we win, and we will win, You'll owe us legal fees that will bankrupt you for life. The third lawyer pulled out his phone. I have a contact at the state nursing board. One call and you're under official review by end of business today. They'd thought of everything, or so they believed. What they didn't know was that I'd already consulted with someone about this exact scenario. What they didn't know was that Grandma Eleanor had seen this coming 2 years ago. What they didn't know was that every single threat they'd just made had been recorded by the phone in my pocket. And more importantly, by someone else entirely. You seem very prepared, I said, keeping my voice steady, almost like you've been planning this for months. James shifted uncomfortably. We found out about the will 6 months ago. We've had time to consider our options. 6 months. Exactly how long ago Grandma had passed. Exactly how long Mr. Harrison had been waiting for this moment. My phone buzzed a third time. The message was different now. They just threatened you on record. Perfect. Coming in. I stood up slowly. You know what? You're right. This is a big decision. I need 60 seconds to think. But I wasn't thinking. I was counting down. Sit down, Grace. Patricia's voice could have frozen water. You don't get 60 seconds. You've had 6 months. 6 months of manipulating our mother's money, Robert added. 6 months of pretending you earned something you didn't deserve. Sign it. James pushed the pen toward me. Stop being selfish for once. For once, I remained standing. When have I ever been selfish? When I gave up my graduation dinner because Linda needed the car? When I missed my nursing pinning ceremony because Patricia scheduled a family photo that I wasn't even in? Oh, here we go. Linda rolled her eyes. Poor adopted Grace, always the victim. The first lawyer tapped the signature line. This is standard procedure, Miss Mitchell. Voluntary transfers happen all the time when will disputes arise. Standard? I looked him in the eye. Is it standard to ambush someone with 3 lawyers? It's standard when someone steals from family, Patricia snapped. I didn't steal anything. You manipulated a dying woman. I held her hand while she died. The room erupted. Everyone talking at once, voices rising, accusations flying. Patricia standing now, Robert's face red, James pounding the table, Linda shrieking about fairness, the lawyers trying to restore order. And through it all, I stayed perfectly still. Because Grandma Eleanor had taught me this too. In chaos, Grace, the calm person controls the room. My phone lit up with a final message. Open the door. You want me to sign? I said, just loud enough to cut through the noise. Everyone stopped. Fine, but I'm not signing anything without my lawyer present. Patricia laughed, harsh and bitter. Your lawyer? You can't afford a lawyer. You're a nurse who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. Actually, I said, walking to the conference room door, I can't afford a lawyer. That's why I'm using Grandma's. The door opened before I could reach it. Mr. Harrison walked in like he owned the building, which, funny enough, his firm partially did. 70 years old, silver-haired, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car, he surveyed the room with the kind of calm that came from 40 years of courtroom victories. Good morning, he said pleasantly. I'm Harold Harrison, senior partner at Harrison, Krensky and Associates. I believe you're discussing my client's inheritance? The silence was deafening. Patricia found her voice first. Your client? Grace doesn't have a lawyer. She's had one for 6 months, Harrison replied, setting his briefcase on the table with deliberate precision. Ever since Eleanor Mitchell asked me to protect her granddaughter from exactly this scenario. The room shifted. I could feel it, the sudden uncertainty, the recalculation, but they didn't know the half of it yet. As Harrison opened his briefcase, I let myself remember those last months with Grandma. The visitors she'd had, not just friends from her country club, but professional people with serious faces and leather folders. The afternoon I'd come home early from work to find her in the study with 3 strangers, signing documents while being filmed. Grace, dear, she'd said, not even trying to hide the papers. Just some estate planning, nothing for you to worry about. But there had been something in her eyes, a sparkle of mischief I'd seen when she'd corner my king in chess. She was planning something. "I know my son's widow," she told me one evening, her voice matter of fact. "Patricia counts money in her sleep. And Robert? He'd sue his own shadow if he thought it owed him something. When I'm gone, they'll come for you." "Grandma, don't talk like that. Listen to me." Her hand had gripped mine with surprising strength. "I'm leaving you everything, because you're the only one who never asked for anything. But they won't accept it. They'll try to break you, shame you, make you feel like you don't deserve it." She'd pressed something into my hand then, a business card with elegant gold lettering, Harrison, Krensky, and Associates. On the back, in her shaky handwriting, "When they come for you, and they will, call immediately." "Mr. Harrison has been my personal attorney for 40 years, she'd said. "He has something for you, but not until they show their true colors, not until they try to take what's yours." Now, watching Harrison pull out a thick folder marked Confidential, Eleanor Mitchell Estate, I finally understood. Grandma hadn't just left me money, she'd left me a chess game, already 3 moves ahead. "This is ridiculous," Robert blustered, but his confidence was cracking. "You can't just—" "Actually," Harrison smiled, "I can." Harrison pulled out a document with an official seal. "Before we proceed, I should mention that this conference room is under audio-visual surveillance, as are all meeting rooms in this building. I trust no one objects to having this conversation recorded." The 3 hired lawyers exchanged glances. The oldest one cleared his throat. "We have nothing to hide." "Excellent." Harrison's smile was razor-sharp. "Then let's discuss Eleanor Mitchell's actual estate plans." Patricia leaned forward. "Whatever documents you have, we'll challenge them. My mother-in-law wasn't in her right mind." "Patricia," Harrison interrupted gently, "Eleanor was my client, but she was also my friend, and she was certainly in her right mind when she told me, and I quote, 'That woman married my son for his money, and she'll try to steal from Grace the same way.'" The room went cold. I pulled out my phone, finally looking at the string of messages from Harrison's assistant. "In the lobby. They just threatened your license. Recorded. Perfect evidence for coercion charges. Mr. H says stay calm. He's coming up." This hadn't been random. Harrison had been in the building the whole time, waiting, listening through his assistant's phone on speaker in the lobby, waiting for them to threaten me, waiting for them to show their hand. Just like Grandma had waited 2 years ago to update her will with very specific provisions. "You recorded us?" Uncle Robert's face went pale. "Without consent?" "This building requires consent to enter," Harrison replied smoothly. "The signs are posted at every entrance. By entering, you consented to recording. I assumed your lawyers would have noticed." The 3 hired lawyers were frantically checking their phones, probably Googling the building's policies. Their faces told me everything. Harrison was right. "Now then," Harrison continued, pulling out a tablet, "shall we discuss what Eleanor actually wanted? Or would you prefer to continue threatening my client with fraudulent elder abuse claims?" Patricia's mask was completely gone now, replaced by naked panic. "We're her family. We have rights." "You have," Harrison said quietly, "exactly what Eleanor chose to give you, which, as you're about to learn, was quite specific." He turned the tablet toward them. Grandma Eleanor's face filled the screen, alive and sharp-eyed, sitting in this very building's senior partner conference room. "Hello, Patricia," her recorded voice said. "If you're watching this, you've done exactly what I expected." Before Harrison could press play, Patricia stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is ambush tactics. We need our own counsel." "You brought 3 lawyers," I said quietly. "How many more do you need?" She turned on me then, 24 years of carefully maintained pretense finally crumbling. "You ungrateful little parasite. We fed you, clothed you, gave you shelter when no one else wanted you." "Actually," Harrison interjected, pulling out another document, "Grace had 2 other family members willing to take her in. You petitioned the court for custody because, let me check the record, the monthly foster care stipend would help with household expenses. The foster care stipend, I'd never known. Patricia's face went white, then red. She pulled out a folder of her own, thick, organized, vindictive. Fine. You want to play hardball? 24 years of receipts, Grace. Every penny we spent on you. She started reading, her voice growing louder with each item. Dance lessons you quit after 2 weeks. $300. Dental work. 15,000 over 10 years. That prom dress you wore once. 200. Food, estimated at 200 per month for 18 years. You kept receipts? My voice came out smaller than intended. For feeding a child? James jumped in, eager to twist the knife. Mom had to take out loans to cover your expenses, loans she's still paying off. That was a lie. I knew it was a lie because I'd seen their tax returns when helping Grandma with paperwork. But it still stung. Linda added her voice to the chorus. You ate at our table every night and never contributed a dime until you were 18. I was a child, I said. You were a burden, Patricia snapped. And now you think you deserve millions, after everything we sacrificed? Robert stood too, his lawyer voice booming. No judge in this state will let an ungrateful adopted child steal from biological family. We have moral law on our side. Moral law? I laughed, but it came out broken. You visited Grandma 3 times in her last year. 3 times. We were busy. You were 10 minutes away. The room exploded again. Accusations flying, voices rising, fingers pointing. The 3 lawyers Patricia had hired were frantically taking notes, probably calculating their billable hours. This was spiraling exactly where Patricia wanted it to go, into an ugly public battle that would drain me financially and emotionally. That's when Harrison pressed play on the tablet. Grandma's voice filled the room, strong and clear. If you're watching this, Patricia, it means you've tried to steal from Grace. So let me be perfectly clear. This is where everything changes. If you're still watching, you're about to witness one of the most satisfying legal reversals I've ever experienced. Quick reminder to subscribe if you haven't already. We post new stories every week about standing up to family bullies and toxic relationships. And please, share this with someone who needs to hear that they're worthy of respect, regardless of blood relations. Now, let me introduce you to the man who changed everything. Grandma's face on the screen was serene, sitting in what I now recognized as Harrison's personal office. She wore her favorite pearl necklace, the one Patricia had tried to claim at the funeral. Patricia, Grandma's recorded voice continued, you're probably standing there with Robert, maybe James and Linda too, trying to intimidate Grace into giving up her inheritance. You've probably hired lawyers. Robert's idea, no doubt. You might even be threatening her career, her reputation, her future. Patricia sank into her chair. Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I know this because I've watched you for 30 years. I watched you count the silver after every family dinner. I watched you tell Grace she was lucky to have scraps while you bought Linda a new car. I watched you exclude her from family photos, family vacations, family decisions. The video, Grandma looked directly at the camera. You thought I was old and blind, but I saw everything. Harrison paused the video. Should I continue? Or would you prefer to discuss the supplementary documentation? What documentation? Robert demanded, though his voice had lost its courtroom authority. Harrison pulled out a leather-bound folder. Exhibit A, Patricia's email to her sister, dated 3 years ago, discussing how to, quote, minimize Grace's involvement once Mom finally kicks it. Exhibit B, recording of Robert, advising Patricia to challenge any will that favors Grace, dated 18 months ago. Exhibit C, James's text messages about, how did you get those? Patricia shrieked. Your mother-in-law was quite tech-savvy for an 85-year-old woman. She also owned the family phone plan you all used. Legal access to all records. The 3 hired lawyers were backing away from the table now, physically distancing themselves from their clients. The oldest one closed his briefcase. "We need to confer with our clients privately." "By all means," Harrison said pleasantly. "But first, let's finish Grandma's message." He pressed play again. On screen, Grandma pulled out a document. "This is my will, updated 2 years ago. Present are 3 witnesses: Dr. Margaret Chen, my physician of 20 years, Judge Dorothy Williams, retired, and Father Michael O'Brien from St. Mary's. All will testify to my complete mental competence." She looked at the camera again, and for a moment, I could swear she was looking right at Patricia. "I leave everything to Grace, because she's the only one who loved me for me, not my money. And if you try to take it from her, you'll trigger the special provisions I've put in place." "Special provisions?" Harrison smiled. "This is where it gets interesting." Harrison pulled out a document with multiple official seals. "This is the supplementary trust documentation, filed in 3 states to prevent jurisdiction shopping. Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell established an irrevocable trust 2 years ago, with very specific conditions." He began reading in his courtroom voice. "In the event that any family member challenges Grace Mitchell's inheritance through legal action, threatens legal action, or attempts to coerce her into surrendering said inheritance, the following provisions automatically activate." Patricia grabbed for the document. Harrison smoothly moved it out of reach. "First, a penalty clause. Any family member who challenges this will owes the estate, now Grace, $5 million in damages." $5 million? Robert went pale. "That's impossible. You can't—" "I can, and I did." Grandma's voice came from the tablet still recording. "I liquidated my private investments to ensure this clause had teeth." Harrison continued reading. "Second, all documentation of Patricia Mitchell's financial misconduct during her management of Mitchell Industries will be forwarded to the IRS and State Attorney General." Patricia's face went from red to white. "What financial misconduct?" "The discrepancies your mother-in-law found when she did a private audit last year," Harrison said mildly. "She chose not to pursue it then, out of consideration for her grandchildren. But that consideration was conditional." James stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Mom, what is he talking about?" Harrison ignored the interruption. "Third, the video depositions Eleanor made regarding the family's treatment of Grace will be released to what she calls interested parties." "What interested parties?" Linda demanded. "Your employers, for one," Harrison replied. "James, your company has strict ethics clauses about bullying and harassment, doesn't it? Linda, weren't you applying to graduate programs that require character references?" The room was dead silent now. Even the 3 hired lawyers had stopped taking notes. Harrison turned the tablet back toward them and pressed play one more time. Grandma Eleanor looked tired but determined. "I know you all think I was a foolish old woman, but I built a pharmaceutical company from nothing before Patricia even met my son. I know how to protect what matters." She held up a photo. It was of her and me at my nursing school graduation, both of us beaming. "Grace is what matters. She loved me when I was difficult, cared for me when I was sick, and never once asked for anything in return. That's why she gets everything. And if you try to take it from her—" She smiled then, that chess master smile I knew so well. "You'll lose everything." The video ended. Harrison closed the tablet with a decisive click. "Now then," he said pleasantly, "shall we discuss your options?" "This is extortion," Robert said, but his voice shook. "You can't enforce—" Harrison pulled up another video on his tablet. "Let me show you the authentication process." The screen filled with a conference room, larger, more formal. Grandma sat at the center of a long table, surrounded by professionals. "State your name for the record," a voice said off camera. "Eleanor Catherine Mitchell, born June 15, 1938. "And you're here of your own free will?" "I am." The camera panned to show 3 doctors in white coats. The first one spoke. "I'm Dr. Margaret Chen, Chief of Psychiatry at St. Mary's Hospital. I've administered a complete cognitive assessment to Mrs. Mitchell. She scored in the 98th percentile for her age group. The second doctor, Dr. James Patel, neurology. Brain scans show no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any cognitive impairment. The third, Dr. Sarah Kim, internal medicine. Mrs. Mitchell's medications have been reviewed. Nothing that would impact decision-making capacity. The camera returned to Grandma. I am updating my will today, January 15th, 2023, because I want to ensure my granddaughter Grace is protected from family members who have shown a pattern of emotional and financial abuse toward her. Could you elaborate? The off-camera voice asked. Certainly. Grandma pulled out a notebook. On December 23, 2019, Patricia told Grace she couldn't attend Christmas dinner because there wasn't enough room, despite having 12 seats and 8 people. On June 3, 2020, Patricia withdrew Grace from the family health insurance without telling her, which Grace discovered when she needed emergency care. On August 15, 2021, "We get it!" Patricia screamed, standing up. "Stop the video!" Harrison paused it. "There's 40 minutes more. Would you like to see the part where she discusses your attempt to power of attorney her assets while she was in the hospital for routine surgery?" The 3 lawyers Patricia had hired were packing up now. The oldest one addressed Patricia directly. "Mrs. Mitchell, we can no longer represent you in this matter. Continuing would be an ethical violation." "What? You can't just—" "We can, and we must." He looked at Harrison. "I assume you'll be filing the appropriate notifications?" "Only if necessary," Harrison replied smoothly. They left quickly, probably calculating how to bill for the partial hour while distancing themselves from potential fraud charges. Now it was just family, if you could call us that, and Harrison. "You have 2 options," Harrison said, his voice gentle but firm. "Sign a legal agreement to never contest Grace's inheritance or face the full consequences outlined in the trust documents." Patricia looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in years. "You planned this?" "No," I said quietly. "Grandma planned this. She just loved me enough to make sure you couldn't hurt me anymore." Harrison placed a new set of documents on the table. "This is a cease and desist agreement. Sign it, and this ends here. No penalties, no revelations, no investigations. You simply walk away and never contact Grace about the inheritance again." "And if we don't?" Robert asked, though the fight had gone out of his voice. "Then by 5 p.m. today, I file the penalty clause activation with the court. The IRS receives Patricia's audit documentation by Monday. Your employers receive the video depositions by Wednesday. And Grace gets a restraining order against all of you by Friday." He pulled out his phone, showing a screen full of drafted emails. "Everything is prepared. I just need to hit send." Patricia's hands shook as she reached for the cease and desist papers. "This is cruel." "No," I said, finding my voice at last. "Cruel was telling an 8-year-old girl that her parents' death was an inconvenience to you. Cruel was making me eat in the kitchen while the real family ate in the dining room. Cruel was 24 years of reminding me I didn't belong." I stood up, steady now. "This isn't cruel. This is consequences." James looked between his mother and me. "Grace, we're still family." "No," I interrupted. "We're not. Family doesn't ambush you with lawyers. Family doesn't keep receipts for feeding a child. Family doesn't threaten to destroy your career because they want your money." Linda started crying, the same tears she'd used to get out of trouble our whole lives. "We didn't mean—" "You did mean it. Every single word. Every single action. You meant it." Harrison slid a pen across to Patricia. "Initial each page, sign the last one." "What about our relationship?" Patricia asked me. "Are you really going to throw away 24 years? I almost laughed. "What relationship? The one where you introduced me as the girl we took in instead of your daughter? The one where you told me I should be grateful for scraps?" I pulled out my checkbook, the one linked to Grandma's estate account, already transferred to my name. "You know what? Let's make this clean." I wrote a check for $50,000 and slid it across the table. This covers every penny you spent raising me, according to your own receipts. Now we're even. Patricia stared at the check like it was poisonous. Take it, I said. It's more than you ever gave me freely. Robert signed first, his lawyer's mind recognizing defeat. James followed, then Linda. Patricia held out the longest, the pen hovering over the signature line. I tried to love you, she said quietly. No, I replied. You tried to control me. There's a difference. She signed. Harrison collected the signed documents with practiced efficiency, making copies on the conference room scanner. These are legally binding as of, he checked his watch, 11:47 a.m. Tuesday, March 12th. Any violation will trigger the full penalty provisions. Patricia stood to leave, then turned back. That money was meant for the family legacy. It is, I said calmly. Grandma's legacy. A legacy of kindness, generosity, and protecting those who need it. Everything you never understood about her. Robert grabbed Patricia's arm. We need to go. Now. But I wasn't done. Wait. They all froze at the door. I want you to know something, I said, my voice steady and clear. I'm using the money to open a free clinic in Grandma's name. The Eleanor Mitchell Memorial Clinic will serve low-income families, immigrants, and anyone else who's been told they don't deserve care. Patricia's face twisted. You're wasting millions on charity? I'm investing millions in humanity, something Grandma would have loved. James shook his head. You could have set us all up for life. You've been set up your whole lives, I replied. Maybe it's time you learned to stand on your own. Linda made one last attempt. Grace, please, we're struggling. You're struggling in a 4-bedroom house with 2 BMWs in the garage. I struggled sleeping in a converted laundry room until I was 16. We are not the same. Harrison opened the door for them. I believe we're done here. As they filed out, Patricia stopped one more time. Your birth parents would be ashamed of you. The words that would have destroyed me a year ago now bounced off like rain. My birth parents are dead, but the woman who actually raised me, who taught me chess and strength and how to stand up for myself, she'd be proud, and that's all that matters. They left without another word. The door clicked shut with a finality that echoed through the room. Harrison began packing his briefcase. Your grandmother would indeed be proud. She predicted every move they made, down to Patricia's final insult. She did? He handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it. She left this for you to open after the confrontation. She said you'd know when. I recognized Grandma's handwriting immediately. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one line. They never deserved you, my darling girl. Now go live the life you were meant to live. All my love, Grandma. I held the letter to my chest and finally let myself cry. Not tears of sadness, but of relief. The war was over. I had won. More importantly, Grandma had made sure I would win. Shall we go? Harrison asked gently. You have a clinic to build. Within 2 weeks, the family grapevine, which had always excluded me, suddenly couldn't stop talking about me. Patricia's biggest client, a medical supply company, pulled their contract citing ethical concerns about family values. Apparently, the CEO's wife had heard about the ambush from someone who knew one of the fleeing lawyers. Robert's situation was worse. The State Bar Association opened an investigation into his consultation on the attempted inheritance theft. Even retired lawyers can't use their credentials to intimidate people. He received a formal censure and was banned from providing any legal advice, even informally. James called me once, 2 months later. His voice was different, humbled. I got demoted, he said simply. My boss found out about what we tried to do to you, said it showed poor judgment and questionable ethics. I'm back in junior sales. I didn't gloat. I'm sorry that happened to you, James. Are you? Yes. I never wanted anyone hurt. I just wanted to be left alone with what Grandma gave me. He was quiet for a moment. Linda's working at Starbucks now. Mom had to sell the vacation house to cover the business losses. The vacation house they'd never invited me to, bought with money Patricia had borrowed from Grandma's accounts over the years. Grace? Yeah? I'm sorry. For all of it. We knew it was wrong how Mom treated you. We never stood up to her. I know, I said softly. Maybe now you can start. He hung up without saying goodbye, but I understood. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. They can only be acknowledged as ash. The extended family, cousins and aunts who'd watched Patricia exclude me for years, began reaching out. Some with genuine apologies, others clearly angling for money. I responded to the sincere ones, ignored the rest. But the most surprising call came from Patricia's sister, Aunt Helen, who'd moved to California years ago. I always wondered when Eleanor would put Patricia in her place, she said. That woman documented everything, you know. She has 3 safe deposit boxes full of evidence. She really loved you, Grace. I know, I said, tears pricking my eyes. I really loved her too. 6 months after that conference room confrontation, the Eleanor Mitchell Memorial Clinic opened its doors in a renovated warehouse on the east side of town, the part Patricia had always called dangerous, but was really just poor. We served 147 patients on our first day, single mothers who couldn't afford copays, elderly people choosing between medication and groceries, immigrants afraid to seek help elsewhere. Each one reminded me why Grandma's money was going exactly where it should. I hired 10 full-time staff members, including 2 doctors who'd grown up in the neighborhood and wanted to give back. The pharmacy tech was a young woman named Maria, who'd aged out of foster care. She understood what it meant to be told you didn't belong. The local news picked up the story. Granddaughter honors inheritance with free clinic for underserved communities. They wanted to interview me, but I declined. This wasn't about me. It was about Grandma's legacy, the real one, not the money-grabbing one Patricia had imagined. 3 months after opening, we received an unexpected donation, $500,000 from the Morrison Foundation. Their letter said they'd heard about our work and wanted to support healthcare equity in honor of Eleanor Mitchell's memory. I later learned the foundation's director had been one of Grandma's bridge partners. The clinic's waiting room featured a portrait of Grandma in her younger days, when she'd been building her pharmaceutical company. The plaque beneath it read, Eleanor Catherine Mitchell, 1938 to 2023. Love is the greatest inheritance. One morning I found James standing outside the clinic, looking at our sign. It's impressive, he said quietly. Thanks. Mom drove by last week. She sat in her car for an hour, just staring at the building. I didn't know what to say to that. She won't admit it, James continued, but I think she finally understands what she lost. Not the money, the chance to be part of something good. He handed me an envelope. This is from me. Not much, but I wanted to contribute. Inside was a check for $1,000 and a note. For the kids who don't belong anywhere else. After he left, I added his check to the donation wall, right next to the one from the local Girl Scout troop who'd raised 73.50 salams selling cookies. Every donation mattered. Every person mattered. That's what Grandma had taught me, and what Patricia had never understood. It's been a year now since that day in the conference room. I still live in my 1-bedroom apartment, though I could afford a mansion. I still work part-time at the hospital, though I don't need the money. Because Grandma didn't leave me wealth to change who I am. She left it to amplify who I've always been. The clinic serves over 500 patients a month now. We've added mental health services and a social worker. Every success story, a diabetic getting insulin, a child getting vaccinations, an elderly man getting his heart medication, is a victory Grandma would have celebrated. I've built my own family now, not blood, but choice. My colleagues at the clinic, the morning coffee shop owner who knows my order, the elderly neighbor I help with groceries, people who see me for who I am, not what I can give them. Patricia and I haven't spoken since that day. I heard through James that she's in therapy now, finally dealing with whatever drove her need to control everything and everyone. I hope she finds peace. I genuinely do, but she'll find it without me. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Protecting yourself from people who hurt you isn't selfish, it's survival. And choosing to use your blessings to help others isn't waste, it's purpose. Grandma knew all of this. That's why she protected me one last time, from beyond the grave. Not with money, but with the tools to finally stand up for myself. Every morning, I touch her photo in the clinic lobby and whisper the same thing: "Thank you for believing in me." And every morning, I swear I hear her voice in the wind: "You were always enough, my darling girl, always." What would you have done in my situation? Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what someone leaves you, it's the strength they help you find in yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helped you feel less alone or gave you courage to set your own boundaries, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming family trauma and finding your own strength. Comment below. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Your stories matter, and I read every single one. Remember, you deserve respect, regardless of where you came from. Until next time, stay strong and know your worth.